Your performance management process really drive the performance that you want to see. Over the last few weeks, I've been working with a very successful midstream company and helping them to revamp their performance management process. Here's what we've been learning about how to do performance management well. Welcome to this week's video. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe so that you'll get notification of these videos as soon as they drop. This week, we're talking performance management, what it's like and how to improve it. Performance management, as it's currently practiced in many companies, has failed to live up to its promise. It takes too much effort to create meaningful goals. It takes too much time to communicate well and get the employee on the same page with you. And it takes too much effort to track. Performance review meetings at year's end are awkward affairs. We talk in generalities. We don't know exactly what they've done. They can't remember exactly what they've done. So we go back to the last thing that we remember, and we end up giving them a score of a 3 or whatever else in your company stands for average or better than average or meet standard or whatever the term is. When really, even in some things, if we knew better, we might score them higher because in fact they've been doing quite well. Or in other ways, we know that they're not performing, but we don't want to have the issue. We don't want to have the pushback. And so we know we can't really justify this score anyway. Now, we couldn't point to something hard. So we just give them the 3 and move on. So performance management, from goal setting at the beginning of the year to the mid-year review to the one at the end of the year, has become, for many folks, a meaningless paper exercise. HR is given the job to drive it. But they don't really want to be the nags. They know that their managers have a lot to do, and they know that this process doesn't really bring much value. Everyone knows, in fact, everyone involved in it knows that the system is broke. And yet I think that we, that is, my client and I, working together from scratch to really say, how could we do performance management differently here in this company? I think we're actually achieving some breakthroughs that change this process in significant ways and address many, if not all, of the issues that I've noted and that are noted here. Now, we're still kind of in process. We just rolled this out to their executives yesterday, but we were met with some initial skepticism and then real excitement as we finished it. Of course, the proof is in the pudding. We now have to have the conversations, set the goals, roll it out. So we'll let you know. But tentatively, we're really excited. And I want to share with you now some principles that we've employed in the system that we're creating that you can use to begin to shift and change how you do performance management in your company. So let's talk about some of the changes that have been made that we're doing, this client and I together. I've broken this down actually into 4 areas that we're going to talk about. We've made changes to goals, behaviors, scoring, and the ability of this whole process to guide leaders in how they incentivize. So the first, goals. This company has been wildly successful. I mean, smart people driving it. And yet, when I asked them, so what are your corporate goals? That's kind of where we want to start the performance management process. They honestly had none. So in the space of actually 2 hours using the balanced scorecard approach, all right, we came up with some corporate goals that they were really excited with. So we went from no goals to corporate goals. And then we took that further, actually, in the meeting that I had with them yesterday, and we determined which of those corporate goals applied to each different department, and then from there began cascading those goals. So to cascaded goals by department. The second area that we changed was in behaviors. That is, what is it we're actually measuring? This company did, like many others who use performance management, they were looking at competencies. Competencies are those behaviors that we deem to be necessary and the ones that successful people in the role actually use. Okay, so competencies. The great thing about competencies is they're very good for coaching on the front end and telling people what to do. They're just horrible for evaluation on the back end since we don't have a camera that follows people around to see them with behaviors in action. So instead what we did is we moved from competencies and we got to them to think about the results tied to behaviors. In other words, if we want people, for example, one of their competencies was strategic thinking, okay? And rather than going around and saying, okay, we can't get inside their head to see if they are in fact now thinking strategically, we can ask ourselves, what are the kinds of results we would expect if people were exercising this? And we came up with a result like opportunities found, mistakes avoided, and a few others that we could say logically, that is, this leadership team could say logically, these in fact would be evidence that people were thinking strategically. The third area that we changed was in scoring. They, again, like other companies have in the past, scored people on the 1 to 2 to 3 basis, where 1 is needs improvement, 2 is satisfactory, 3 is exceptional. And of course, ends up like most people where we get a lot of 2s and some 3s, but no 1s that some people deserve, at least in some areas. And so in some ways, this system, this compares people to one another, or it actually compares it to the perfect employee, right? The one that gets all 3s. And of course, we know that none of those employees exist. What we changed it to is by doing it based upon primarily the cascaded goals, which in fact we could then look at and say, well, how much of this goal is achieved? And secondly, by the results we expect from these behaviors. For example, team morale might be an expected behavior or expected result for a leadership behavior. And we can measure that. And we know what it was supposed to be and what it actually was. So at the end of the day, we can come up with a percent value that is based upon what was expected versus what was actually achieved. So at the end of the day, we're not comparing to some ideal candidate. We're just looking and saying, here's what we expected from you, and here's how much of that you actually gave. The last change, that is in its ability to guide, is really a function of these other changes that we're making to the system. When you give people a 2 or a 3 or whatever the average comes out to be, based on standards that are vague and fuzzy, and we don't know how they really scored anyway, at the end of the day, when it comes down to, well, should this person receive bonus or part bonus or all of it or whatever, you're kind of stuck going, yeah, I guess we will, unless there's a real lapse somewhere else in their performance. So it was worthless. It didn't guide them. And in fact, it doesn't help you in deciding how to incentivize them further. Whereas if we come out with very clear goals, results we expect to see, and then have a sense of actually how much of these results were provided, we know someone came up with a 75 or something like that. We have real guidance. Now, that's not to tell you, you can do with that score whatever you want. You could say, well, you get 75% of your bonus if that's how much you achieved, or you can establish a threshold score where everybody who scores above this number gets full bonus. You can do with it what you want. But now you have a real score to point to that justifies why you're giving the bonus that you're giving to the people that they get, if that made any sense at all. So today we've been talking about improvements to performance management. I'm really geeking out on this because this has been such a headache for so many people in HR and the managers that have to try to do it for so long. And yet, we're working with a system that really has a lot of promise. We showed it to the executives yesterday. I can tell you one, the COO in particular, was very skeptical, didn't really want to change the system, didn't see it, and in the space of 2 hours was saying, you know what, this is really straightforward. I really like this. This will really help us to direct our people, to align them behind the corporate goals and help them do what they need to do, but also to know how to talk to them when it comes evaluation time. Do stay tuned. Of course, we'll have a follow-up to this as we use it and learn further about how to do better performance management. Thanks for watching today. I so appreciate your eyes, your time, your viewership. Please do subscribe if you haven't done so already. Like it, share it with your friends, and let me know what you would like. How do you go about performance management? What have you learned to really drive the behaviors and the results that you want to see in your organization? Please share that in the comments below, and anything else that you'd like to share. And until next time, be well.